Thank you for tuning in to Mr. Cliff's Toy Shop. So in today's review, we take a look at the Beast Kingdom Thanos Egg Attack Action Avengers Endgame Armored Thanos. Today I'll be reviewing this figure in the following categories: accessories, articulation, design, is it essential to your collection, functionality, and price. Once those scores are totaled, I give you my opinion if this figure is a pass or a purchase. So if you're worried about why the box looks this way, we'll talk about this when it comes to pricing. So for accessories, you really receive a fair amount. So you get, I guess it's not fair to call this a head sculpt. You get an additional interchangeable face. If you look at the back, you can see that it actually ports in. And I like how this looks. You receive 9 hands in total, as well as 2. We'll talk about the other piece a little bit later. Hands are done well enough. Got some black here. Now this I really like. So you receive, before we jump into that, the gauntlet. But just in case you don't want to display the fist, you do have an open hand to where you can exchange it. And just in case you don't want to display this at all, you actually receive a regular arm. Very cool that they incorporated this. And you receive his weapon in the movie. Really like how this is done. So for accessories, I feel we get a good amount. Just due to the price point, I think we should have gotten a 3rd interchangeable face. So for overall accessories, I'm going to give this figure a 9 out of 10. So just before we get into the articulation, just want to show that the helmet is actually removable. So this is a separate accessory. I'm going to count this as such. So I'm going to adjust my accessory score and give Thanos a 10 out of 10. So for articulation, I'm going to elect to see how he's articulated without the helmet on. So his head is able to move about that far up, which isn't much at all. It's able to come down barely any. It does rotate, perhaps a full 360 if you choose to, it does. And you get a good amount of pivot. The head also shifts forward a great deal, and it shifts backwards not so much. So the arm is able to extend out about that much. It's able to rotate. The next point of rotation will be at the elbow, continuing to the wrist. The wrist is on a ball peg, so depending where the line is, you should be able to get the hand to go in any direction that you choose to. The arms are single jointed, bending in about that much. I don't think we're going to have much articulation within the torso. Nope, this seems to be one solid piece. So Thanos is able to really not bend forward at all. Barely able to get any back, and you get a great amount of rotation at the waist, no pivot whatsoever. So the legs are able to extend out about that much. You do receive rotation. There's an upper, no, not fair to call that a thigh cut. It's more so at the knee, or at the boot you do get rotation. Knees are single jointed, bending in about that much. The foot is able to, doesn't go down at all. Barely goes up any. You do have toe articulation moving forward all the way. So I didn't check to see if there was a butterfly joint. There is something. I'm going to say that doesn't classify as a butterfly joint. And I nearly forgot. So the foot doesn't pivot in nor really out. So for articulation, we have some challenges. The torso is completely restrictive, unable to move forward or backwards. We receive very limited range in the arm, though for a character this size. Plus with armor, I don't feel that's so bad. The head is barely able to look up any. And we receive no ankle articulation. So for overall articulation, I'm going to give Thanos a 4 out of 10. So for design, this character is based on the Avengers Endgame. And it is super stylized, so much stylized that it's almost hard to take it serious. For anyone who collects this line, this is the reason that you collect it, because of the stylization on the characters. So, let's zoom in. So, the very first thing that I want to point out, I really like how the gold is done throughout. It isn't super reflective, though it does really mimic gold in a good way. Much better than Marvel Legends, not quite as good as McFarlane, though this could have been the look that they were actually going for. I like how the weather, how the helmet is weathered, as well as each of the armor bits throughout on the body. There's a lot of texturing and scope work throughout. There are scratches, dents, and bruises just over nearly all of the figure. The back itself is pretty clean. And I like this big grinning head sculpt. The head itself is way too big, but it's how it's designed to be for this particular line. The torso is exceptionally big as well, to where the legs are super short and the arms are pretty long. So the character is sort of done up in a cartoon style. That makes me laugh a little bit at the figure, certainly not in a bad way. I think that this is the point of this line, not to take the design aspect that serious, but for it to be fun, cute in a way, and I think it definitely captures that. So for design, I am really trying to find a balance here. I know that this is Beast Kingdom's play on Thanos in the movie, so it's not meant to be exact to that design. However, in saying that, it is not exact to the design, and that's essentially what I'm scoring. So I'm going to have to take both into play, and for overall design, I'm going to have to give Thanos a 5 out of 10. Figure essential to your collection. Assuming that you collect Beast Kingdom figures and that you are building an in-game display, then I'm going to say yes. It appears that Beast Kingdom is invested in this lineup, and they have quite the number of characters after the Infinity War or Endgame movie. Now, they do have another version of Thanos based off the Infinity War, the first film. So for that, this one has to drop a little bit as far as being essential. So with this version of Thanos, I feel that you can get away with a few things. It's not comic book accurate, but I feel that it's close enough to sort of skew the line of sliding him into a comic book style collection. Also, given that the helmet is removable, you can even have him sit in your Infinity War collection as well. So as far as being essential to your collection, I'm going to give this guy a 9 out of 10. So for functionality, let's start with the head and let's remove this helmet. Let's turn him to the side. This is an issue. This big seeping gap, that looks awful. The difficult part about this is I can't even glue it or seal it because I need to use the other interchangeable head. So it almost makes you not want to display him without the helmet. So in order to remove the face, I'm assuming that you just pull forward. That comes off easy enough, exposing this. So now, before I put this head on, you can see that there is an eye system. I am almost scared to move it. Let me just take a peek so I'll remember how. All right, both are facing almost all the way to the left, but not quite. All right, so let's just play with this a little bit. Yeah, I'm not a fan of moving this. I feel like once you start playing around with it, it is very hard to get it back to how it was. So I'm going to kind of put it back to the left. All right, too far. All right, so I'm going to leave it dead centered. I think it's dead center anyway. And you simply use this, prop it in. Goes in very easy. And this one is actually way better. It's sealed much better, but nonetheless, you still see the line. Before I put that helmet back on, I really like how that head slides up and moves that way. But I don't like that we only get that much of range. So now, the other issue with functionality is that the torso is really unable to do anything, which essentially renders it to being a statue. So let's focus on the Infinity Gauntlet for a moment. By turning it, I pop the arm off, and just to show you, we'll get to that. So for the Infinity Gauntlet, you can pull that out, comes out pretty easy, and you can attach the fist to it. And it's on a ball peg, so depending how you line it up, you can get it to move where you need it to be. Now, just leaving this down for a moment, I want to show the other arm that he comes with, or forearm. Just in case you don't want him to wear it, the Infinity Gauntlet that is, you can place this in. There's the hole here with a very large peg, and it goes in relatively easy. This forearm piece feels a bit more secure. It's tighter than the gauntlet was. So I want to switch to the other hand. Before doing so, I want to put this figure down. It is very heavy. This figure has to weigh maybe 2 pounds. Has a lot of girth. Not sure if you heard when it fell earlier, but I was worried for my glass table. So I'm just going to place him down for a moment and find a proper hand. So I think this is the hand that we're looking for, as this is the only one with the grip. I want to take some time to see how to port this on, or actually push it through. So I'm going to start with the thumb. I'm going to use my fingers to try to push it back some and then wedge that in. So it is very tight. Okay, but then I have it in, and I just want to focus on this weapon because I didn't earlier. And it's done pretty well. There's some imperfection, it appears to be, in the plastic. I can see where they went for weathering, but then there are some misses, such as hair. And a lot of it, which is supposed to be stained or burned metal, sort of look like a coffee stain. So for this arm here, we're simply going to pull off that hand, just to let you know that these gauntlets are functional and removable. The hand goes on like so. That was very easy. And he's able to hold this without an issue. And it does rotate, as he did in the film, which didn't make a lot of sense. So coming down to the legs, we get to talk about some issues here. The first is that the figure does not stand well. For him to be so heavy, I assume that he would, but he does not. It's very hard to get him to stand, so he fails the stand test. Reason being is that the legs are so short. Like, you're able to pull down on the legs just a little bit to make them a little higher, but that doesn't help making him stand. And pushing them back up doesn't help either. They're not loose per se, but it just is not supporting the weight because the upper portion of the body is so much larger than the legs, and the majority of the weight is in the torso. And probably moving on to my last gripe would be the ankles not fully being able to turn in. That's all that you're going to get. So for functionality, there are some things that I like and some things that I don't. So let's talk about some of the things that I do like, starting with the head sculpt. In order to swap the faces, it is done very easy. A simple pull with a large enough clip or peg to simply plug in place. It is very easy. It's efficient. I also like that for both head sculpts, you have the options of rearranging the eyes. I sort of wish that it was a one movement system to where both eyes were on one piece, and if you move left, both move left. You move right, both move right. You go up, both move up. You get the point with that. I like that the helmet, is able to be used with both head sculpts. That's fantastic. And I really like how the head moves forward. Now, one of the things that I don't like with the head is the lack of movement, especially looking up. Feel that you should get more range, especially when the helmet is removed, but it doesn't make a difference whether the helmet is there or it isn't. The other issue is the movement on this figure. The lack of mobility, specifically in the torso, really hinders what you can do with this character as far as movement, given that his bottom torso is exceptionally short. I like that we receive the proper hands to hold the weapons, and we receive a fair share of hands, so you're able to give Thanos additional expressions with his hands. I really like for the gauntlet that we receive a closed fist as well as an open hand. A snapping one would have been cool. A damaged accessory also would have been great. About the legs, it's going to be hard to get Thanos in some exaggerated poses as the legs are just too short. It's a very compact system. It almost goes from torso directly to thigh without the pelvis and right to the knee. So for functionality, I feel that each time that I was deducting points for one thing, I was able to find some points to add within that same area. So for functionality, I'm going to give this figure a 6 out of 10. So for pricing, Thanos comes in at a whopping $100. Now to get back to my damaged package, I was able to pick up this figure from Amazon for about $37 shipped, $37 including taxes, because the box was damaged. Now, if I'm scoring pricing off of the $37 that I paid for this figure, let's round it to 40. then I would be giving it a 10 for pricing. But we're going to look at the original price that it cost, which is $100. So for $100, let's talk about some things that I think that should have been added. Looking at the gauntlet specifically, for that price point, I feel that we should have had a light up feature. We don't. For that price point, I think that we should have had an additional head included or face sculpt. We do not. Also, for that price point, we should have some added mobility, and we do not. Also, with this figure, I'm seeing a lot of paint rub, especially on the forearm area where the gauntlet would go. It has actually rubbed off on both arms. So for pricing, I'm going to have to give this figure a 5 out of 10. I feel that the price point shouldn't be higher than 50 bucks. That should give Thanos an overall cliff score of 29 out of 30. So is this figure a pass or a purchase? If you're able to score him for a discount and you are collecting this line, then absolutely pick it up. If you are just getting into the line and spending $100 on this, I think it's a long way. There are a lot of options. There are a lot of things that are better for that $100 that you are spending. So I'm going to say it is a pass. So just to give you an idea of scale, here he is next to Sebastian Shaw, which I just recently reviewed. Here he is next to Storm Collectibles Gears of War Cold Train, which I plan to review soon. Here he is next to my giant size Pop State Puff, which I will open at some point. And here he is next to Gwen Stacy from the same line. So that will conclude this video. I hope to see you during the next review.